Once again, we're going to be implementing VLANs in this example, and there are 3 of them. And this is a router on a stick configuration, and our router this time is a 2800 series router, and all 3 of our switches are 2950 series switches. And they all have trunk links to each other. In addition, this switch has a trunk link to the router, which will be configured with sub-interfaces. There are 3 different subnets, and it's a Class C network address, which is normally CIDR 24, but with CIDR 28, we're subnetting the last octet or the last byte, and that's 4 bits for subnetting and 4 bits for hosts. That gives us a block value of 16 and a subnet mask value of 240. That means that this is network 16, this is network 32, and this is network 48, respectively. To start with, let's configure our first switch. So I'm going to log on to the 2950 via console port, and I'm going to use enable to go to privilege mode, and from privilege mode I want to go to global configuration mode with config T. First thing I'll do is modify the host name to something more desirable, and now I'm going to select the administrative VLAN, VLAN 1, and specify an IP address. And remember that this is network 16, so the gateway is 17, the first available address after that would be 18, 19. Those are used by our host here, 18 and 19, so we'll pick 20. 199, 207, 10, and 20. And a Class C subnet mask subnetted on the last octet or last byte with 4 bits. And the next thing I want to do is specify the default gateway, and that's IP default gateway, and oops, I spell that right, gateway, and it's 199, 207, 10, and 17 will be the default gateway address. And the next thing I want to do is enable secret Kiwi. And the next thing I want to do is select line console 0. We'll specify line password and Kiwi. And the next thing I want to do is specify the telnet password, which will be line VTY015. And it's going to be password Kiwi and login. And these are sort of the first preliminary configurations that are set on the switch. So if I do a show running configuration, there's my secret global password, nothing on the port yet, no VLANs yet, there's an IP address, and there's a default gateway, and some passwords for telnet. And we'll save what we have. Now let's do the same for the second switch. And let's set this up to kind of move this over here, that way you can see the IP address. So on the second switch, again, we're going to log in via the console port, and we want to go to privilege mode with the command enable, and with config T, let's go to global configuration mode, and here let's specify the administrative VLAN, VLAN 1, and the IP address, which in this instance 199.207.10, and we're on network 32. The gateway would be 33, we're using 34 and 35, so we're going to make this 36 in this example. First available IP. And again, it's a normal Class C with a subnet on the last octet, 240, 4 bits. And let's go ahead and go down and give it a default gateway. And it's going to be 199.207, and we're on network 32. Our default gateway is going to be 33, so 10.33 for our default gateway. And while we're here, let's change or modify the host name. So this will be the Pegasus in this case. And let's specify some passwords. Okay, and I'm going to select the console port and specify a password and log in, and I'm going to specify the virtual terminal VTY015, and I'm going to specify a telnet password, and permit login access, and I'm going to zoom out to privilege mode and copy run start. Now we're done with that configuration on the second switch. And there's our IP and our host name now. Let's kind of drag these over. And let's go ahead and hop on our third switch now, and we'll set it up as well. So on our third switch, again, through the console port, let's log in and go to privilege mode and global configuration mode. And in global configuration mode, the first thing we'll do is give it an IP address. So we'll select the administrative VLAN 1 and IP address and 192.168.10. And this is network 48. Remember that the gateway is 49. We're using 50 and 51. So we're going to do 52 as the first available IP address. And a subnetted class C, 255.255.255.240. So 4 bits for the subnet, 4 bits for the host, block value of 16. Exit, let's give it the default gateway with IP default gateway, and that's going to be 199.207.49, 10.49. And let's go ahead and give it a host name. And host name is going to be the Valkyrie. And I'm going to zoom down to privilege mode and do a copy run start. While we're at it, let's also give it some passwords. So global configuration mode and our password of Kiwi, and line configuration mode console and password of Kiwi, and we'll specify login and virtual terminal or telnet password VTY015 and password of Kiwi and login. And again, I'll zoom down and do a copy run start from privilege mode. And that completes the setup of our third switch now. Just kind of drag him out. So now you can see the host names and IPs of our switches. The next step, we need to go in and set up our VLANs. I'm going to hop on our first switch now. And from privilege mode, oops, me and my password, and enable, and from privilege mode, I'm going to do show and VTP status. And if I do that, notice the information it gives me. In this case, I'm in the default server mode, which I need to be in to create VLANs. And I haven't specified any VTP domains. In order to remedy that situation, in global configuration mode, I'm going to use the command VTP domain, and I'm going to go ahead and create a domain here. So changing VTP domain from null to battle stars, and I'm going to exit, and now I'm going to use the command from privilege mode, VLAN database, and notice the prompt changes, and I go into VLAN database configuration mode. And to make my VLANs, remember, I don't want to start at 1 because that's my administrative VLAN, so I'm going to start at 2. VLAN 2, name, and silence. And now we'll do VLAN 3, name, humans. And now we'll do VLAN 4, name, hybrids. So we've created 3 VLANs now, and they have names. And now we've also set up a VTP domain in this example. And now I'm going to go ahead and exit. And I want to configure the domain in client mode on my other switches. So copy, run start, and we'll set up our other 2 switches. Now let's hop onto the second switch and set everything up. So again, our password, enable to go to privilege mode, and our password Kiwi. And in global configuration mode, this time I want to specify the VTP domain, and I'm going to put it in the same domain, so Okay, and even though eventually this is going to be in VTP server mode, one of the things that you can do that Cisco recommends is, if you don't want to have to manually enter your VLAN information all over again, once you make it part of the VTP domain, put it in VTP server mode. So I'm going to do VTP mode, client, but client mode, and then it'll copy the the VLAN database information from the VTP server, the first switch that we set up, or the Galactica. So to verify that, I'm going to go ahead and Control Z, zoom out to privilege mode, and I'm going to show the VLAN database with show VLAN. Notice that now it's copied all of those Cylons, humans, hybrids. Okay, and that's show VLAN, and if I do show VTP status, notice that I'm in client mode and in the same domain. So now, in order to be able to manage, modify, add, delete VLANs later on, as well as my ports and things, I'm going to go ahead and put it back to server mode now. So VTP mode and server. And when I do that, I'm going to drop back down to privilege mode, and I'm going to do show VLAN. Look at my VLAN database. Notice that those VLANs are still there. Okay, so everything's hunky-dory. And now I'm going to save everything on this switch. Now let's log into our third switch and configure it. So through the console port, password of Kiwi, go to privilege mode, again a password of Kiwi, and let's go to global configuration mode, and let's set our VTP domain, and in this case Battlestars. And now we remember that we're not going to have the VLAN database information, and we don't want to have to enter it manually, so we'll do what Cisco recommends. Once again, we'll set it to VTP mode client, and then that'll get us that VLAN database from the VTP server switches, and then we can always set it back, just do VTP mode server to set it back. But if we do it that way, it's less work. If we get on here and we show or examine our VLAN database, notice that there are 3 VLANs, so we don't have to recreate them: Cylons, humans, and hybrids. So now our 3 switches have been set up with the VLAN database. Now we need to assign VLAN membership to the ports. Now I'm going to log into my first switch. Notice that in this case I have host plugged into ports 1 and 2. So those are the 2 I need to configure. So over here for this VLAN, I'm going to log in with the password of Kiwi, go to privilege mode with the command enable, and another password of Kiwi. I'm going to go to global configuration mode, and I want to specify the interface command and fast Ethernet slot 0 and the first port in this example. Now that I've selected that port, I can set the VLAN, and it's going to be switch port and access VLAN 2, because remember VLAN 1 is the administrative VLAN. And once I've done that, I also want to configure a switch port, mode, and access to set it to access mode. Now I'm going to select the next interface, F0/and2. And again, I want to also put that in VLAN 2, so I'm going to say switch port access VLAN 2, and I want to put it into access mode instead of trunking mode. So switch port mode access. Okay, so those ports have been configured, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. Drop down to privilege mode with Control Z and copy run start. And if I do a show on the running configuration, notice that here, I'll go up here a little bit. So for port 1 VLAN 2 and port 2 VLAN 2 and the switch port access mode. Okay, so those are set for VLAN 2. And I'll exit out, and I need to configure my other switches. Now I want to configure our second switch, and again our hosts are plugged into ports 1 and 2, so we want to select this. So let's log in to via our console port, password of Kiwi, go to privilege mode with enable, Kiwi, and go to global configuration mode, and we'll select fast Ethernet slot 0 port 1. And here we want to use our command switch port access VLAN, and we did VLAN 2, so now we're going to do VLAN 3. And in addition to that, we also want to do switch port mode access, and now we want to select interface fast Ethernet slot 0 port 2, and same thing, switch port switch port access VLAN and 3, and again we're going to set it to switch port mode access mode. Just can't talk and type at the same time today. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our configuration. Drop down to privilege mode. And now let's go on to switch 3. So now I want to configure the VLAN membership and the access ports on the third switch. And again, I plugged them into ports 1 and 2, so those are the ones I want to select. So we're going to log into the switch, and we're going to go into privilege mode. And now I want to go to global configuration mode. And in global configuration mode, we want to select the interface, in this case, F slot 0 port 1, and use the command switch port access VLAN and 4, and now we want to do switch port and mode and access, and my space key is stuck on my keyboard here. And now I want to do the next interface, which is going to be fast Ethernet slot 0 / port 2. And I want to do switch port access VLAN 4 and switch port. Man, you have to bang that thing. I think I'm going to have to replace the keyboard. Okay, mode access. Okay, so now those ports are set. And now we need to configure our trunk links and our trunk ports. This time I'm going to work my way backwards. So I'm going to start on the third switch and configure the trunk ports. In this case we had port 12. So logging on to the switch, I'm going to go to privilege mode and global configuration mode, interface fast Ethernet slot 0, and man, I'm telling you that space is really stuck. Fast Ethernet slot 0 / and port 12. On port 12, I want to specify that it's a trunk link and a trunk port, so I'm going to do switch port mode, I have to bang the spacebar, and trunk, and now I want to do speed and duplex. We'll set it to full duplex. Okay, and now we're set. So all VLAN information will travel across that trunk link. Now let's look at the next switch. And again, this port 12, the trunk link, needs to connect to, in this case, this port 11, which is the trunk link. Excuse me, yeah, port 12 there. So we only had one here, we're going to have two here because we have the connection coming from the third switch and the connection going to the first switch. So 11 and 12, and let's go ahead and log in. And let's go ahead and go to global configuration mode, and we'll start fast Ethernet slot 0, and we'll select port 11 and switch port, and we'll do mode and trunk, and let's set the speed 100 and duplex to full, and let's go ahead and go down to privileged. Actually, what am I saying? Let's do the next interface, fast Ethernet, slot 0, and then now we want to select port 12 in this example. And again, switch port, mode, trunk, and let's do speed 100 and duplex full. And let's go ahead and zoom out to privilege mode and copy, run, start. And now we're good on the second switch. Now we just need to configure the last switch, the first switch. Hop on that switch. Again, we have two ports, 11 and 12, that are configured as trunk links. So let's bring hyperterminal up over here, and I'll use enable to go to privilege mode, go to global configuration mode, and let's select the first fast Ethernet interface, slot 0, port 11, and let's use our commands. So switch port mode trunk to set it up as a trunk port and a trunk link. Let's go ahead and specify speed 100 and duplex full, and let's specify the next interface, fast Ethernet, slot 0, port 12, and let's do switch port mode to trunk to make it also a trunk port and a trunk link. And this will go to the router, and in this case I want to specify speed 100 and duplex full in this example. And I'll zoom out, and I'm going to do a copy and run and start. Okay, so our VLAN configuration and our switch configuration is done. Now we need to hop on our router and set up encapsulation, in this case .1Q, and sub interfaces. So log on to our router, 2800 series router, and let's go to global configuration mode and specify a host name. We'll call this one the enterprise. Now on our router we need to select an interface, and we don't need to configure an IP address on the physical fast Ethernet 00 interface, but we just need to do no shutdown to bring the interface up. And now what I want to do is select a sub interface. So it's going to be interface and then fast Ethernet slot 0/0 and then a decimal value, so .1 would be the first. I need to specify the encapsulation, and with the 1900 we used ISL, but that's not compatible. This is a 2800 series router and a 2950 switch, and it doesn't support ISL, so we need to use .1Q. So I'm going to use .1Q for 802.1Q encapsulation, and then I need to specify the exact number of the VLAN. So remember, the administrative VLAN starts at 1, so we started our VLANs at 2, 3, and 4 respectively. So I'm going to choose 2 for VLAN 2. And now I want to specify the IP address, which is going to be 192.168.10. Remember, our first network based on our block value of 16, subnet value, was 16, network 16. Well, the first valid address, the gateway for that network, would then be 17. Okay, so 17, and a class C subnet mask that is subnetted with 4 bits in the very last byte or octet. So 4 bits for subnetting and 4 bits for hosts. And then if we want to do a string description, this would be gateway for network 16 VLAN 2. Be a good string description there. That's all we need. Now we just need to do the other 2 interfaces. Remember that if we don't do routing, a VLAN is a separate broadcast domain. So unless we set up our interfaces and routing for each of these, then our hosts won't be able to communicate with each other if they're in other VLANs that are not the VLANs that they're members of. So to finish setting up routing, I'm going to select the next subinterface, which will be F0. 0.2 will be my next decimal value, and I need to specify encapsulation, and I'm going to do .1Q again for 802.1Q, and my next VLAN was 3, so specify 3 IP address and 192.168.10, and it's network 32, so my first valid IP would be 33, and that was the gateway Class C subnet. Again, in the last octet, subnet it as 240, and the mask value, and I'll set a descriptive string. In this case, we'll call it gateway for network. Oops, I'm telling you, I've got to replace this keyboard. I have to bang the space there. Gateway for network 32. It gives a nice rhythm to that every time I bang the space bar. And then VLAN 3. Okay, and the last one, let's select the last subinterface. So interface F/0/0 decimal value 0.3, and now I'm going to do IP address, and that network was 48, so it's going to be 199.207.10, and the first valid IP, since it's network 48, would be 49, and it's the gateway. That's the gateway address. And it was a Class C subnet mask, and the last byte subnetted as 240 for the mask value. And finally a descriptive string, and in this case we're just going to say gateway network 48, and that was VLAN 4. So VLANs 2, 3, and 4. Oops, we didn't set our encapsulation. Let's do that too. Encapsulation and .1Q, and let's specify VLAN 4 in this example. So 2, 3, and 4. Doesn't really matter the order, but you just want to make sure that you do that for each sub-interface. So I'm going to do Control-Z to zoom down to privilege mode, and let's take a look at our running configuration if our spacebar holds out. Okay, and notice here, so VLAN 2, 3, and 4, encapsulation 2, 3, and 4 needs to match the VLAN. Make sure the network addressing and subnetting is good. In this case, the subnet mask is good, all the same. The 16 network, first available IP 17 is the gateway, that's good. The 32 network, based on a block value of 16. The next, the first available IP is 33, that's the gateway, that's good. And then the next network is 48. First available IP is 49, that's the gateway, that's good. So things look okay there. And let's do copy, run, start. We'll save our configuration on the router, and we are ready to test things out. So again, since VLANs are separate broadcast domains, by default I wouldn't be able to reach anybody outside of my VLANs. Now let's test it out. We'll hop on Cylon 3 over here, and of course we should be able to ping somebody in our same VLAN. So if I try to ping, what we got over here, 19, which is the number 6 model, should get 4 echo replies. Okay, and then let's test out, let's see if we can't reach our gateway on the router. And remember that our gateway, the first valid IP was 17 here. So gateway on the router, and we get 4 replies. Okay, so if we can get that far, let's see if we can get an adjacency on the router, which would be the gateway for the next VLAN. We're in VLAN 2 here. Let's try to get somebody in VLAN 3 over here. Now that's network 32, first valid IP is 33, and that's the gateway. So let's see if we can't ping that gateway, which would be a direct adjacency, the way our subnetting works. And there's 4 echo replies. So if we can get the gateway, let's see if we can't get 34 and 35 from VLAN 2 to VLAN 3 through the router. So we'll go 34, and we'll go 35. Looks good. Now let's try and reach the next gateway. Remember that the third network is 48, the first valid IP is 49, so let's see if we can reach 49, which is an adjacency on the router. And yes, because of encapsulation, .1Q, and our sub-interfaces, and our router and a stick configuration in our router, we can reach that interface that far. So the next two addresses, 50 and 51, we can reach. So everything's hunky-dory and everything works.